Fluidity, cohesion, pressing, still the intensity there. Let's talk a little bit about Liverpool's 1-0 win against Real Betis. Some of the personnel, some of what we've observed has changed, and some of what we expect to come in the coming weeks, and especially in some of these pre-seasons in the United States. Welcome back to Laurence McKenna channel. It's good to have you guys. If you've not already hit subscribe, do at the end of the video once we've spoken. This side does look very fluid. This side looks very relaxed. They look like, to an extent, having changed the system, a change has been as good as a rest. And not all of these guys have had a rest this summer, though some of them still have. It's still lovely to see some of the motivation, the players playing with the confidence that they have, the communication, the difference in the shape between Arne Slot's side and Jurgen Klopp's team, and also just the difference in the circulation of the ball. Liverpool made something like 680 passes in this game. Klopp's side did enjoy passing, but it certainly wasn't the 680 level consistently. There are games where you find they do a lot more of the long ball stuff. Those games you find do a lot more of the short ball stuff. I'm not sure that we're always going to see this side completely passing the opposition to death in the way that we remember, say, a Pep Guardiola side, but I do think that circulation of the ball and the way that Liverpool move it to once they win possession back is going to be quite different, and is certainly going to be something that strangles a lot of the opposition sides if Arne Slot's system is to work. Let's talk personnel for a second. Obviously, there are quite a few Liverpool starters that weren't there. A lot of them still recovering from tournaments or coming back or still away on holiday or whatever it is. So, we can't call this like a full preview of what is still to come of this Arne Slot team, but I think you can see systemically a lot of what is there. Obviously, there's Kelleher in goal. Obviously, you've got Bradley, Gruel Quansah, Sepp van den Berg, and obviously Tsimikas. A midfield pivot, which I think is one of the most interesting elements of the system in the first place, between Endo and Curtis Jones, which then went on to be Trainiani. More about him in a second. Immediately ahead of that, you've got Szoboszlai, Salah, and then, wait, who actually started out on that other wing? I need to actually check that. And then, you've also got Harvey Elliott out there as well, and you've also got Fabio Carvalho. Why? How could I forget Fabio Carvalho? Anyway, fairly decent Liverpool starting lineup. I think you can see roughly where players are going to fit in now. But what's weird about it is there was like a kind of false 90 type box system that's being played in that midfield. Liverpool didn't really have a recognised striker out in the field that you could obviously call Mo Salah one of the most dangerous players in the world. And so obviously he was one of those players that is very dangerous. But I love watching him as that combination winger that he ended up being used as. And actually, there's something quite satisfying about Liverpool not having a striker in the game, playing a really solid game where they only really conceded one significant chance and came away with a win from a Dominic Szoboszlai goal on the underlap, which is one massive thing we expected under Arne Slot, from a Mo Salah pass from previously before that, a Trainiani ball. So there's a lot of satisfying things to be seen here. Liverpool at centre-back. I think, obviously, this isn't the final centre-back combination that we're going to see for Liverpool, but it's nice to see that Gruel Quansah seems fairly comfortable in receiving the ball, seems pretty good at executing what Arne Slot has asked him to do, and equally, Sepp van den Berg, who probably will be leaving on the other side, also seems pretty comfortable, but also that Slot has managed to slot him into the system, no pun intended, has also managed to play a player who probably doesn't want to be at Liverpool right now or doesn't think he should be at Liverpool right now. Maybe isn't looking for another opportunity at Liverpool. Maybe he is. I mean, maybe if he impresses Slot, who knows? But I still think he leaves for a fairly sizable fee this summer, say around 20 million, if Liverpool can get someone to bid that, which I personally think they can, having seen some of his performances. And also I think in pre-season we're going to see a lot more of that. It's really good to see the way we use the wing-backs. I think we observed this from the couple of minutes that we saw of the Preston game, the overlapping, the underlapping, these like satisfying, almost Wenger-like lines just going down the field, triangle, triangle, little diagonal ball, and you're away, a lot of 1-2s. There is an element of Wenger ball in there. Am I wrong? I know that it's not the same shape, but do you get what I mean? Like the fluidity to it seems so different. It's a very different kind of fluid to the way that Klopp and Pep just had that Liverpool side playing. And to an extent, it highlights some of the limitations of the previous Liverpool side that were obviously very dominant, were obviously very good. But I think, I want to say this without putting the Klopp era down because I'm so fiercely loyal to Jurgen Klopp, but it seems like there was an element of the chains have been taken off. And you will obviously we know that a difference in system can often get the best out of players. Szoboszlai wasn't played in this central style role before as like an almost number 10, even though he plays more like a transitional 8 at times. Harvey Elliott equally wasn't played in that position. Fabio Carvalho wasn't even in the Liverpool team before. And obviously Mo Salah did play as a winger, but I don't think he did kind of play as a facilitative winger towards the end of the Klopp era. So, maybe that's one of the most biggest similarities. I want to talk about this double pivot though. Trainiani came on for Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones looked very comfortable in receiving the ball, but looked like he just got a little knock, back of his leg, or was just kind of feeling something, so had to come off. He was playing alongside Endo. Endo, I think, obviously the more defensive of the two, the one that's probably a little bit more static, probably mopping up a little bit more, while the other slightly more creative role is there. I'm not saying that's because I don't think Endo's capable, though obviously I think, you know how I feel about Liverpool at their sixth position at the moment. I think it was always going to be that whoever came on to play alongside Endo was going to be that more forward-thinking or more kind of less defensively minded player. And Niani certainly looked great both ways. He was my man of the match. I mean, I know there are a lot of good players in this game, but he's a really talented young midfielder. We saw him a little bit, for a fraction of a second under Jurgen Klopp, and I think a lot of people were speaking about him being a really great option. We've got such an interesting midfield right now, and I think watching this midfield system grow is going to show a lot about where Liverpool are on their way to and why maybe it is quite difficult for Liverpool to sign people right now. It doesn't mean that Liverpool don't want to sign players. It doesn't mean that Liverpool shouldn't be out there spending in the transfer market. But I've got a real faith in Liverpool's academy system, which, by the way, is massively developed under Jurgen Klopp, which is massively fed into the really positive crop of players that we have at the moment. So I think, whilst people are busy sort of slagging off the previous Klopp system and the previous Klopp era, I think a lot of people are talking about purely pitch output there. They're not talking about the overall club. And I get it. Curtis Jones had his chat earlier in the week about, this is the best I've felt in this kind of play and system and those kind of things. You could kind of tell there was a slightly veiled kind of comment or at least critique there of what Klopp had him doing. But I think Klopp was always, Klopp helped him progress. He kept him at the club. He helped him into the position he's in now. And frankly, I think a lot of other managers probably would have given up on Curtis Jones in previous eras. So it's really great to see him doing what he's doing now. And obviously it's incredible to see Trainiani, who is a really talented player, coming through. The want to compare him to someone like Kobe Mainoo, who is, a cut above so many players, is obviously going to be there. But I think he's an incredibly talented young midfielder. Doesn't mean we don't need to sign someone. The reason we need to sign someone, relying on young players for a whole season, especially if they're only coming through and making their debut season, is probably a mistake, especially if you're aiming for what Liverpool are aiming for. He's a very talented player. He certainly will deserve and credit some minutes this season. But we've seen Stefan Bajcetic get injured. We saw obviously Bajcetic playing in the Champions League at other top levels. Sometimes they do slightly struggle to keep up with the pace of the league. Sometimes they do struggle to, keep up with the physicality and the physical rigors of what it is to be a player. And as much as they can learn things mentally, as much as it's great to be around that first team squad, you always want to see experienced players getting their opportunity and being able to take Liverpool to new levels. And I think that probably will happen. I think 6 is probably Liverpool's priority signing position at the moment, alongside a centre-back. Alongside that, obviously we see Conor Bradley returning to his old right-back berth. Trent obviously finished the season there. The injuries, but Trent obviously was the preferred player at right-back. Conor Bradley obviously had a very tough season last season. I felt very sad for him off the pitch, losing his father. And I think he's shown great mental resilience to stay in this position. Obviously, I think Liverpool's support will probably have helped him to some extent, but he's an incredibly talented young player who could do a lot in this Arne Slot system and clearly enjoys the overlapping and combination play that I think Jurgen Klopp kind of hinted at times with him. So I think the progression and the fact that Liverpool have got some form of cohesion here going through the team, going from the previous Klopp era into the Slot era, is very satisfying. I'm really excited for that. Kelleher, solid. I think he's a great goalkeeper. We saw him do that last season. We'll see him do that again this season, see him step up. I'm looking forward to seeing Alisson back in that back line, though. I love Alisson. Can't get over that. Virgil van Dijk, not back yet. Looking forward to seeing him come back as well. I think Tsimikas enjoys this slightly more marauding role. What was weird was the Liverpool box in the middle of midfield. Obviously, the two midfielders received the ball a lot, the two in the double pivot, but then the two ahead did create this box type shape, and it allowed Liverpool to feed so much off those through balls. But they've got touches all over the field. The Szoboszlai and Elliott model out on the field works. Both of them receiving the ball and passing it off pretty quick, making their own runs, making those centre-backs think, giving space to those wingers, giving space to the guys that are going to cut inside and then try and slot in. There are comparisons to be made with Mikel Arteta's team, I think. There's a lot of comparisons actually made with a few areas of these sides, like the Arsenal teams. I think what's interesting is this Real Betis team are nowhere near like a low block against Liverpool. It got a little bit scrappy at times where you could see Liverpool and Betis either wanted to win the ball back and were a little bit sloppy, a bit training-esque, or got a bit frustrated out on the field and were looking to kick the other off the field, Betis towards Liverpool more than the other way around. So I'm not sure we've seen them in a Premier League type situation yet, where I think there will be a lot more deeper, embedded sides who are saying sort of, go on, come break us down. And we're not really going to see that between Arsenal, Manchester United and everyone else. Maybe we'll see it for Manchester United. You don't know how Erik ten Hag is going to play, but it's interesting to watch. And then, of course, recycling the ball. It's very different watching the passing patterns than the ones that we saw during the Klopp era. I don't think this is really a Klopp shape, especially if you look at the average positions. I'm just going to bring those up there. You can see that. Let me just hold that there for you guys. Can you look at that? Should really put that as a graphic. Anyway, the point is there are two inside 10/8s, which I've said this for a while. I think this is going to become, and has been for a little while, the most dangerous part of the field for a lot of managers. It's the reason Newcastle wanted Tonali. It's the reason Manchester United want to get their front line sorted out with the Xerxes and Bruno Fernandes in terms of progress of the ball. And you can see it in a number of different teams. Obviously, City are moving that way, though I actually think City are going to go wide and then come back in and try and create some space in the middle. I wonder how much Liverpool are going to try and do the same. I think this season is going to be a lot about those wingers going wide and then coming back in towards the 10s and then out towards the strikers. I don't think that's any tactical revelation, but I think the way that you play the either double pivot or the single pivot behind that, and the way you use your numerical advantages out on the field, will be interesting to see. I'm not quite sure this is the end model, is what I'm saying for Arne Slot. He's only had a couple of weeks with this side now, and we've not even got most of the senior players back. I think we will end up seeing a signing of a 6, probably one more signing after that, but I can't see Liverpool going crazy in this transfer market. It doesn't seem like there's an awful lot of value there this summer, and I think they'll be giving themselves time, and probably also having already gone in and assessed a lot of these guys in the academy, they'll be saying, do we really need to make any knee-jerk or immediate top-level signings, especially looking at what we're going to recontract out in this team and also what we're going to bring through from the academy. Obviously, it's disappointing not to see someone like Dan's out on this tour. Slight knock before he came out. Would be great to see some more of the youngsters. But I think we've seen a lot of the youngsters. I mean, look at all of these substitutions that Liverpool made. They brought on Yoni, obviously early on. Obviously Yaros, goalkeeper. Tyler Morton came on. I wonder if he'll get another loan spell or what we'll see from him. He was very impressive away in the Championship last season. Whether he'll get a chance, we can't give all these people chances in one season, though maybe obviously they can train with their side. But I don't know if a lot of them are going to be satisfied with that. I don't know how many of them are going to think they're going to get a long-term at Liverpool. Lucas Stevenson was in there, Luke Chambers, Nathaniel Phillips, wow. Stefan Bajcetic came on again. I think Bajcetic is a really great player. He obviously came on and was a little bit deeper than Yoni was, a little bit deeper overall, I felt. And I think played like a maybe slightly more conservative role, but overall, I'm looking forward to seeing him in this squad. Owen Beck obviously came on. Harvey Blair. I want to name check everyone. I'm excited to see Kay Gordon in this team, though he was a little bit all over the place. I'm not really sure he got long enough to show what he needed to do. Ben Doak, obviously, and then I don't even think Kumas played for long enough for it to be like anything beyond kind of a register. So, or didn't have enough involvement. Came out, was out on the wing. I think replaced Fabio Carvalho in that capacity. I want to talk very quickly about this Klopp replacement. And that's not me saying Arne Slot is this Klopp replacement, but you can already see the different air around the club. I think there was a slightly stagnant feel towards the end of the season when Liverpool realised that they were going to drop away. I think there was a bit of criticism and maybe a bit of derision from some of the dressing room about the end of the Klopp era. A bit of frustration, a bit of sadness, to be honest. A little bit of grief of losing and leaving a man behind who had been so significant, had helped shape this team, had helped shape the culture, had helped lift the air of negativity off the club. And there was a bit of sadness about that. Like, the end would have been lovely to leave on a high. But I also think Klopp knew, I think, to an extent that he was needed to move on, that the youth needed something else, someone else, and that those older players who were so dedicated to Jurgen were going to have to move on at some point soon, and that maybe he didn't want to be the guy to do that. I'm not saying he shied away from it, but he just didn't want to have to rebuild this team again, and maybe he couldn't rebuild this team within the time and the capacity and the transfer budget that he had, and maybe it was time to bring someone else in. as sad as that makes me feel, not that I'm like overly emotionally attached to a tactical system, I think, we're seeing already the fruits of some of that. Obviously, this is early days, but the comments from a lot of the young squad, or comments from Curtis Jones, those kind of guys, maybe it's not directly Klopp, maybe there are some other people in there. You're looking at Pep Lingers, who's obviously gone on and obviously taken an immediate coaching role, but sometimes things can just you need change. And when I say a change is as good as a rest, a change is as good as a change in this particular instance. Liverpool very directly needed to make sure they could cope in this next era. And I think Klopp had a few bites of the cherry at this point, even if he was limited by transfers, those kind of things. I'll do a longer term video on my Patreon. Go take a look at that. I'll put that up later in the week about the end of the Klopp era, the transition into the Slot era, the end of the Klopp era, the transition into the Edwards and Richard Hughes era, and why I think it was probably necessary, but also why Klopp was a huge part of doing that in such a classy and respectful way. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. I've heard the comments from people like Curtis Jones, which sometimes have felt a little pointed. I don't know. I know that they love the goalkeeper coach. I know they loved a couple of those other coaches, but overall, I think we're seeing the benefits of changing the system. And at the moment, we don't know if that's overall good or bad. We don't know whether Liverpool are going to drop away or whether they're going to push on. But early on, shoots of what is growing up look positive. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I'd love to know your thoughts. I'll be reflecting those obviously in videos to come and on the Patreon and of course on the Discord. There's a link down in the description. Go take a look and I'll see you guys in the next video. Much love.